Good morning and afternoon to all students. Again, my name is Mr. Watson, the band director here at Campbell Middle School, and this video is for all my students who are working on their packets, and this is video 2. Please make sure if you haven't seen video 1, you go back on our YouTube page and double back on that so you can get all the right answers and get that beautiful A we think we so rightfully deserve, okay? Couple of things. Now, yesterday, the last video, we wanted to make sure we go through lessons 1 through 4. I know towards the end, we got a chance to go over lesson 3 leading into 4. So we're going to backtrack a little bit, do a quick refresher, and then add up on, starting on 3, and go to 4, 5, and hopefully get to 6 today, okay? So, as a refresher, lesson number 1 talks about our staff. Yes, our staff consists of 5 lines and 4 spaces. 5 lines divided by 4 even spaces. And you saw all of those not only on my board, but on your paper as well. It asks you to draw, number 1, staff connecting those dots. And some of us skip that, but it's all right. We already know what we're missing. We'll go ahead and make sure we add that on there as well, yes? And that's pretty much the bulk of that. We also talked about how do we number our staff. And as you can see over here on the left side of my board, also have it on the right, you have where you number your spaces and your line names as well, okay? Remember, we number ours from bottom up, so my spaces are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I have my 5 lines on the far side, but you can't quite see it right now. So these are how we have those ordered. Let's go ahead and move on to lesson 2. Lesson 2 dived into the 2 different clef signs that you're going to be dealing with. When it came to the treble clef, the second line was the important line. Started on the second line, we go ahead and create our monkey's tail, and then poop shoot straight down to create it. Now, some of us were not listening, not paying attention, and it shows when it comes to, I can't draw this, Mr. Watson. Well, Mr. Watson is showing you. Again, you want to start on that second line, create your monkey's tail, swirling up, and then poop shoot straight down, and remember where it lands. That's a little big, but I wanted to make sure I showed you what Mr. Watson is looking for. And again, the second line is important because it gives us our secondary name, which was the G clef. Now, outside of that, we also have the bass clef itself. Bass clef important line was line number 4. Started there, create our half a heart, and a dot above and below the important line. That 4th line is known as F, so this is our F clef. That is both the treble and the bass clef, okay? So now that we got done with lesson 2, let's go ahead and pick back up on lesson 3, where we talked about, and again, if I'm moving too fast, you have to catch those back up either in the previous video or wait till after class in order to go back, okay? Right now we are on lesson 3. Say it again, we are on lesson 3, so please make sure you have yours turned open to that portion, yes? Lesson 3 talked about the lines and space names, okay? That is the purpose of our clef signs. They give us the lines and space names. Just like I have a name and you have a name, these lines and spaces have a name as well. And they are named off of the letters that we talked about before. Remember, we deal with 7 letters in music. The first 7 to be exact. So it's A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So again, we deal with 7 letters in music, the first 7 to be exact, and this is what's going to help us out with our lines and space names. We go back to the treble clef. Go back to the treble clef. There are little devices that we use in order to help us out to remember these lines and space names. Remember, they were called mnemonic devices. These are called mnemonic devices. So as I write my mnemonic device, it's going to help me with my lines and space names. Prime example. Let's go with our line names for treble clef. Okay? Start with the mnemonic device. Easy way to remember it. Okay? We want to make sure we remember every good boy does fine. Every good boy does fine. Okay? And this helps us out remembering that the first line is E, second line is G, third line is B, fourth line is D, and the last line is F. Okay? So again, this helps us out with our line names. Now for the space names, a little bit easier. But just in case you forget, remember, all of our lines and spaces, if we put them in order, goes in order of our ABCs. Prime example, first one is E. So that means we're starting here. E is our line, then that space is the very next letter. That very next space should be F. Then the line above that space is G. Then that next space after G would be A. Above that space is a line. That's the third line. That means we're now at B. But above that B is the space. So after B, we have C. Above C is a line. That line is D. But above D is a space. That space is E. So it's important that we go through our lines and space names. Now for the mnemonic device, it's just very simple because the letters spell the word face. Okay? Get out my face because you're in my space. Easy way to remember. That's how I remember it. I don't know about you. And the same way we do this could be said for bass clef. Bass clef, same concept. However, we have good boy does fine always. Good boy does fine always. And it starts with our G. Next line is B. Next line is D. Then we go to F. And finally, A. Good boy does fine always. Okay? Same concept as we did with the space names as well will apply for our bass clef. So if we're starting on G, that means that next space above it must be A. After A is B, which is a line. Now we're back to our space, which would be C. After C is D, which is the line. Now we're back to our space, which is E. After E is F, which is our line. Then we're back to the space, which would be G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A, C, E, G. And an easy way to remember that was all cows eat grass. True statement, by the way. However, it also helps us remember our space names. So let's go ahead and get into these next two lessons, okay? This is the important part that I want to make sure everyone is catching up on. I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to shift down so everyone get a chance to see it all. Good. Let's go ahead and repeat ourselves. Let's say we're on treble clef. Lesson 4 gives you whole notes, okay? The thing about lesson 4 and the whole notes that they give you is, number one, they talk about either line whole notes or space whole notes, okay? And what I said before with both my numbers and my letters, if you have a line whole note, that means the line is directly in the middle of that whole note. However, if you have that same line, but it needs to have a space whole note, that whole note needs to be in between those lines. So line whole note, space whole note. Some people won't listen, even though I'm saying it right now for number 1 and number 2. Line whole note, space whole note is what we're looking for. So now we have that out of the way, let's talk about some of these questions. One of them, I think that's better to do it that way. One of them give you a note here, note there, note there, note there, here, 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 here. These are the various notes that they give you. The first line, second line, first space, second line, third line, second space, third space. Gives you an order, going back and forth. It asks you to draw the treble clef. In order to get that, you need to draw the treble clef in the beginning. So draw your monkey tail from 2, poop shoot, and there you go. Now we can start. It helped you out by giving you the first letter. Okay, this is now on the second line. This easy. Every good boy does fine. My line names. Every good boy does fine. One more time. Every good boy does fine. So I want to make sure every good that is G. My space name should be easy. Get out my face because you're in my space. Yes? So it's on the first one. If we remember our FACE, then we should be writing F. I'm only going to do a couple more because I want you to be able to tackle it yourself. Yes? So again, we're going to go ahead and go to the second space. Easy, face. Get out my face because you're in my space. So that means the second one is A. F-A-C-E. But now my next two goes back to our lines. The second line and then the third line. Well, let's look at that second line. Not only did we have that answer already, we also remember our mnemonic device. Every good boy does fine. So we're looking at G for that next one. I'm going to do one more. We're going to go ahead and talk about this third line. Okay? Every good boy does fine. Every good boy does fine. Every good boy does fine. You want to make sure you're reading those accurately. Okay? The same thing can be said when it comes to our bass clef. It has similar to the same pattern as the treble clef. It asks you to draw the bass clef, and it gives you the very first one. The first one's on the first line, okay? Good boy does fine always. Good boy does fine always. And I know that's correct because there's 5 lines. That means I have 5 letters for my mnemonic device. Okay? Good boy does find always. So we're on G. Next one's on the second line. Good boy does find always. So we're on B. Now we have 2 spaces. First space, second space. All cows eat grass. So it's going to help me out knowing that I know all, and this on the second space, cows, and then eat grass for if we have any further ones later on. Let's do 2 more. This was on the second line. Again, we've done that one already. Good boy does find always. So good B does find always. This is on the third line. Let's repeat our line names. Line names, bass clef, good boy does find always. And that trend should follow for the remainder of lesson 4. Lesson 5 is actually very, very easy. And I'll come back to all of this momentarily. But all of these things should be on your paper already. If you're looking at grade section, it says everything that Mr. Watson is talking about. Okay? So again, that's what I want to make sure we have accomplished. And now let's dive into lesson 4. Or was it 5? Lesson 5. So again, lesson 5 talks about the whole notes, half notes, and quarter notes. Our whole notes, half notes, and quarter notes are very, very simple. We've already dealt with our whole notes already. We want to now dive into our half notes and quarter notes, okay? So before we dive into which one, how many each one gets, let's take a step back and look at what they look like. Our whole note was that big circle before. Our half notes is that same circle but add a line. Any direction, as long as there's a line there, which gives us that letter D persona, okay? And finally, our quarter note is that same circle, add a line, and fill it in. So now we know what they look like. The big thing about lesson 5 is how they are placed on this staff, okay? Easy observation. Whenever you have a half note or quarter note, and they are on the second space and below, they're going to look regular, with the stem going up. With the stem going up on the right side. However, whenever they are on the third line and above, so again, second space, third line. Whenever they're on the third line or above, you're going to see the stem go down on its left side. Both of these are still half notes. However, it changes depending on how high on the staff you are. So again, remember, third line and up tells us we need to take that stem go down. However, anything below that, you're looking at it regular. That stem going up. The same thing can be said with the quarter notes. From the space down, you're looking at these quarter notes going with the stem up. And from the third up, you're looking at the stem going down. It's all they ask for when it comes to the. It's all they ask for when it comes to the quarter notes and half notes on lesson 5. And they ask you a weird question. They ask on number 3, what direction would a stem go in the treble clef on the B line? Well, let's go ahead and backtrack. Treble clef. So they said line, yes? So that means we stem go for treble clef B. I lie. So they asked for B. They want to know where B is and ask us where should the stem go. So let's use quarter notes for now, right? Let's find B. So we know we have good boy does fine always. Okay? Good. Sorry. I think someone just corrected me. It is actually every good boy does fine. Mr. Watson's tired this morning. So it's every good boy does fine. So let's find B there on that third line. So let's remember, for when we're on the third line and above, you got to remember where our stem goes. Okay? Third line and above, our stem wants to go down. Look at number 4. It says bass clef C. The line names first. Good boy does fine always. Well, there's no C there. Let's try our space names. All cows eat grass. All cows. There's a C there. So let's go ahead and name our space names. All cows eat grass. Where's C? So in that second space. So that means we want to go ahead and create our quarter note here. However, since it's below that third line, our stem wants to go up. Look at Mr. Watson, give you answers and everything. That is all you need to accomplish for lesson 5. And here's where things get crazy. Turn to lesson 6 and let's talk about what I need for your quiz. The beautiful part is that they give you the clef sign for each and every one of those questions. So that means you need to make sure, if I'm looking at a treble clef, I have my every good boy does fine. Those are my line names. Then if I have my space names, I'm looking for F, A, C, E. Get out my space because you're in my face. What's the other way around? Either way helps me. Then we have our bass clef. Line names are simple. Good boy does fine always. Good boy does fine always. And then for the space names, all cows eat grass. All cows eat grass. A, C, E, G. Sounds fantastic so far. We want to make sure we add those in. Another good thing is that for the first one, for each one, they give you the letter names. So please make sure you're doing it accurately I'm going to leave this up here for another for a little while. I am going to try and zoom in so you can hold this high and finish the rest of the class period trying to add in all of these notes in there, okay? Someone asked a question. I know you're going to ask them. I'm going to double back with it. Some of them have 2 letters for each one. Prime example, look at the treble clef. There is a line F and a space F. If they ask you for questions 6, 7, and 8 to write an F for your treble clef, it does not matter which one you use. You use the high line F or the low space F. Either one is okay. But you want to make sure that you do write an F for either one of them. As long as they accurately put in an F, we're okay. So it's pretty much all. Ms. Watson is going to stop the video here. I'm going to make sure I zoom in for you. And if there's any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know.